The end of that has a little Top Gun feel to it right there, doesn't it? I mean, it's like, anyway. Hey, church, it's so good to be here today. My name is Matt. If you're new here, glad to have you with us, and so looking forward to be able to share with you today. And right now, we have many who are joining us online as well. Just checked, we have the Bolins that are driving back from Florida. We have Melanie out in East Tennessee, and Amy is driving across Kansas. And if you're on I-70, turn it up and don't fall asleep. So that's all I have to say to you. But and we also have our modern hymn service. So if you're in the room with me right now, would you welcome in all the rest of our family? Good to have everybody with us today. We are in week 3 of our Mixtape Volume 4 series. So hopefully you've been here the last couple of weeks as we've been diving into the book of Psalms and hitting some of our favorite Psalms. As you look at the book of Psalms, it's kind of a mixtape, if you will, made up of all different kinds of Psalms about coming from different directions. There's Psalms of worship, Psalms of praise, of thanksgiving, of remembrance. And there's also Psalms that we call Psalms of lament. That just sounds like a great word. You're already excited about the rest of the service whenever you talk about lament. But there are a number of psalms that are declared or described as songs of lament. And songs of lament are characterized by the voicing of complaints or statements of distress, sorrow, hurt, or loss. It's even getting more excited, isn't it, right? But probably every one of us, not probably, every one of us have gone through times, maybe you're in a time that could be characterized as a time of lament, right? Growing up in the 80s, I made my fair share of mixtapes. And if you were one of those that made those, you probably were like me and you had a mixtape for different occasions or different emotions. And, I had my workout mixtape, and get me pumped up, or pregame mixtape, getting ready for football games, or I would have my loud bass thumping mixtape, to play in the Jeep while I'm cruising around. But I also had, and maybe you had one of these, your sad song mixtape. Yeah, those moments where you just, maybe your girlfriend broke up with you, And I actually had a location that I like to go and listen to my sad song mixtape. I grew up on a farm north of Stillwater, and we had a hay meadow that I could drive to the top of the meadow and look over the town of the beautiful town of Stillwater. It's great. And I'd pull up there on my Jeep, and I'd click in that mixtape and just be depressed, Just me and my Jeep, no girlfriend probably, pretty sad. And I would take in the moment. And one song in particular, I remember this was on my mixtape, and it was the song Lights by Journey. When the lights go down in the city. Yep. Some of it, you know what I'm talking about. Now, I looked up the lyrics this week because I was like, man, I haven't listened to that song forever. And there are hardly any lyrics to that whole song. It's crazy. But the only lyrics that make, sense are these, all right? I've got it on TV here. Here we go. It is, so you think you're lonely. Well, my friend, I'm lonely too. So you can envision me looking over the lights of Stillwater. Lonely. Anyway, sad. But that's lament, all right? It's like, it's just down. And I'm dealing with hard challenges, circumstances, whatever going on in my life. We've all been there. And like I said, some of you may be there right now dealing with challenges and hurt in life. Work challenges, financial challenges, health challenges, parenting challenges. And yes, let me include marriage challenges, right? Put it on the list because marriage is full of challenges. It's tough. That's why we celebrate marriages here that are, we call them our gold medal marriages, 50 years plus. Here just a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated our gold medal couples, had 20 of them able to be there with us as we celebrated them. And I know we have some in the room. And so if you're in this room or maybe you're over in Modern Hymn, I want you to stand up if you are a gold medal couple. You've been married 50 years plus. Some of you, there you are, there you are. Yeah. Love it. Love it. I love that we have couples like this among us to be examples, right? That we can look up to and that we can go to. I mean, Steph and I, we celebrated 30 years. We're 20 years away from being gold medal. We're gonna get there. Anyway, if she stays with me. Anyway, otherwise I'll be back in the meadow. That'd be sad. Anyway, that's not gonna happen. We're gonna make it. We're gonna get it. No, I love that we have these couples here that we can look up to and celebrate. We had the opportunity to hear from two of our gold medal couples, some words of wisdom and advice. So I want you to check this out. Listen to them.
My name is Nancy Marshall, and my husband is Claude Marshall. We have been married for 63 years, would be 64 in September.
Hi, Nancy. My name is Rex McKee. This is my wife, Sharon. We've been married 63 years.
You don't say hi, Nancy.
Oh. No, we were high school sweethearts. Got married when I got out of high school. And the rest is history.
We've been blessed. It has been an amazing journey, and I wouldn't want to do life with anybody else.
Well, the secret for me is divorce is too easy on them. You stay with them and make them miserable, and I take pride in my work.
And I'll guarantee that to be a fact. As long as you learn to laugh at yourself, at each other, and with each other, never go to bed mad, and if you do, before you go to sleep, you tell her you love her and give her a big old kiss.
Even if you have to grit your teeth when you say it.
He needed a little bit of training, especially in the field of communication. He was raised on a farm way out in the country. Only child, all he had was dogs. And therefore, he did not communicate much and still does not today. So it's really taken a lot of work to get him to communicate, and I'm still working on it.
I could say amen to that.
He likes to think he wears the pants, but actually.
We make decisions together,
Yes, we do.
but we like to tell it the other way around.
If I approve of what he's making the decision about. If I like his decision.
I think my piece of advice is for everybody, you young couples starting out, stay in church, raise your families in church, stay strong in the Lord, and never, ever give up on each other.
First, I think they need to love God. They need to be involved in church. And then they need to learn to share that feeling with one another.
You need to be forgiving because there's going to be hard times and you're going to get through them. Hard times do help you learn, but don't hold grudges. That's the worst thing ever, is to hold a grudge. Because you're going to make mistakes, they're going to make mistakes, but you can overcome it.
You will have some troubles. They will come along. They're unavoidable. But if Christ is in your life and the center of your life, everything can be worked out. And don't run. Stay in there and fight, because it's worth the fight. She wins all the fights.
Love it. Great words of wisdom, and just love those couples. And man, like I said, I know many of our couples would love to sit down with you, maybe go to dinner with you and you and your spouse, and just talk life. And man, you can gain a lot of wisdom from them. So I appreciate those couples for sharing with us. And but again, life is filled with challenges. Marriage is filled with challenges, and that's what we are going to talk about today. Psalm chapter 3 is where we're going to be at, the Song of Lament. And it starts with kind of a title that we call it a superscript that says this: a Psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. Now, the circumstance that David is in right now would make a great soap opera, right? I mean, this has Stefano and Marlena all over it, right? Stefano has Marlena in a cabin in the wood for 2 years. Everybody thinks she's dead, right? I mean, that's this kind of story going on. If you don't know what that is, Days of Our Lives. Anyway, I don't watch it, just grew up with it. Anyway, but his story right now, it is family strife, there is rape, there is murder, there is resentment, there is banishment. I mean, there's just so many things that are happening in his family right now that now leads to this point where now David's son Absalom is trying to take over the throne and kill his dad, all right, the king, David. And so David flees the palace, flees Jerusalem with his fighting men who are still with him, with his family, trying to get away from his son. David is no doubt under pressure, right? And it's in this time that he lifts up this prayer, this song to God. Let's look at verses 1 and 2 there in Psalm chapter 3. It says this: "O Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him." Selah. Side note, word Selah, we're going to see that 3 times. There's a lot of debate over what that word means. It's not a real clear Hebrew translation. Some believe it's just a musical notation saying to pause here. And that's kind of where I land. It's something to say, hey, stop here and think about this, right? Think about what's just been said. So that's where he's at. But notice in this text, 3 times he uses the word many. I have many foes. I have many people against me. I have many voices speaking against me. And truth is, when we face challenging times, we have a tendency to exaggerate things, right? It's like, oh, everything's falling apart. Everybody's against me. The entire staff doesn't like me. You know, we exaggerate, right? Start talking in absolutes, all that good stuff. I don't know that David is doing that here. Matter of fact, if you go back to the story where it all actually happens over in 2 Samuel chapter 15, here's how one moment is described here. A messenger came and told David, the hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom. The hearts of the men of Israel, those men who were on your team, those men who were on your fighting side, they're not anymore. They're with your son. And so to characterize this as many would be accurate. I mean, they have all turned against David. And so when he says, many are my foes, many are against me, many voices are speaking against me, he's probably pretty accurate. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you've had times where you felt like the whole world is against you. And you felt the pressure of that. Many had written David off in this moment. There's the statement in there that they were saying, not even God can save him this time. Oh yeah, God saved him from Goliath and God saved him from the Philistines and saved him from Saul, but not this time. God's not going to come through this time. Have you ever had negative voices in your life? The naysayers, you know, they always had the discouraging word at just the right time, right? Always appreciate those people. David had those, and we can learn something from David here. In this moment, when it seemed like David had lost everything, and in spite of what the voices were saying, David once again turns to God. Listen to this. When we have nothing left but God, we realize we need nothing else but God. That's where David is at. That's what he recognizes. We try so hard to be self-sufficient in this life, right? We try so hard to do it on our own, to get through on our own strength. But sooner or later, we reach the end of ourselves. And that's actually a good place to be. Because it's when we get to the end of ourselves that we tend to start looking up to God. Listen to how David continues the song. Verse 3, he goes on, but you are a shield around me, O Lord. You bestow glory on me and lift up my head. To the Lord I cry aloud, and he answers me from his holy hill, Selah. He begins to find hope. He moves from lament, here's my terrible situation where everybody's against me, many are against me, to let me now turn to God. And he starts, but you, Lord, you are my shield. There's something different about this lament than laments that we find in our culture today, right? Laments in our culture, I mean, it's like country music. Country music is one big lament, right? I lost my house, lost my wife, lost my dog. Now I just sit here and drink my beer, you know. Beer's about the only hope you get in there. Not that that's a good thing. Anyway, but in biblical lament, there's actually hope to be found. And one author put it this way, lament is a practice of hope in the waiting. I like that. That's biblical lament. Hope in the waiting. I'm going through struggles, I'm going through trials, but there's hope. I'm gonna praise my God, I'm gonna turn to my God, and I'm trusting that he's gonna be there. And that's what David does in this moment as he shifts gears in this text, and he begins to recognize where God is at and what God is doing for him in this moment. And he begins by saying, but you are a shield around me. You surround me, God. You protect me, God. Now, in those days, a warrior would typically have a shield, thick leather, typically on their left arm, able to shield themselves from whatever the enemy might fling at them, spears, swords, arrows, whatever. And the shield was important on the battlefield. David, being a warrior king, he had been in plenty of battles, and he knew the importance of a shield. And he says, you are my shield. God, you are there. You surround me. You're not just a shield in front of me, but you're all around me. You protect me. God, you are my shield. David continues in that text. He says, you bestow glory on me. God, you give me significance. David has lost his kingly glory at this time. He is on the run. One description that's given to him, again, over in 2 Samuel 15, where this story is being laid out, says this, but David continued up the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. His head was covered, and he was barefoot. Doesn't sound very kingly, does it? He's lost any kingly glory that he had, but he recognizes that the glory that he does have is that which God had given him as a child of God. He was called by God. That's where he finds his significance. Listen, your significance in this life is a result of God's call on your life. Your significance in this life is a result of God's call on your life. We are children of God, right? That's what we just sang about just a little bit ago. I love that song that the team pulled out for us today. We are children of God, and we rest in that, and that's where we find our significance. Not in our position at work or our accomplishments or our looks and beauty or health, not in our possessions that we've accumulated. All of those things can go away in an instant, right? That's not where our significance lies. Our significance lies in the fact that we, as followers of Christ, are children of God, and nobody can take that away. And we trust in that. David goes on, he says, you lift up my head. In this time of unbelievable pressure and hurt, you, God, you lift up my head. And you know the picture of that when we drop our head, that's a sign of discouragement. Watch any team that's in a losing fight, and you can tell how they're gonna do when you see the team on the sideline begin to drop their head. It's like, oh, they've lost. They've lost. They've dropped their heads. David says, oh, but you lift up my head. You give me the encouragement that I need. When you're tempted to drop your head, where do you turn? When you are discouraged, where do you go to find your courage? Do you look within? Do you muster up the strength from within? Do you do what the latest self-help book says and just say, doggone it, I can do this? Or maybe you find your courage by comparing your strength to the others around you and, well, I'm better off than they are. Or do you find courage by comparing your circumstance to the power of God? God knows that in this life we're going to face trials, we're going to face situations, struggles that are going to require us to have great courage as we move forward through this life. That's why there's so many scriptures that talk about having courage. One of those is over in Psalm 27:14, where it says, wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. Literally, when it says wait for the Lord, it's trust in the Lord. Trust Him. And when you trust Him, you can have courage. Get this, when I compare the situation I'm facing to the God that I'm trusting, then I can have courage. David's prayer shifts from talking to God to talking to his readers as he continues. It says this, I cry out to God and He answers me. David is confident in God's leading, right? He's turned to God before and God's always been there for him. And once again, he says, I cry out to Him and He answers me. And I think there's some reasons why that happens for David, because I believe he's positioned himself to receive from God. He walks with God. He is described later in scriptures as a man after God's own heart. I mean, he's walking with Him. He's listening to Him. He's striving to follow Him. But if you read the story over in 2 Samuel, you also discover that he had surrounded himself with spiritual advisors. He had people that he trusted who could speak truth into him and give him advice and give him direction in the midst of the trials that he was facing. And so he had positioned himself to hear from God. How do you know when God answers you? When you turn to Him, when you pray to Him, how do you know when it's He, when it's God that is speaking to you? Because there's lots of voices in this world. Maybe it's some spiritual advisors you have around you that you trust, and when they give you advice, you recognize and realize that what they are sharing with you lines up with what God's Word says, and so you trust it and you lean into what they have to say. Maybe it is God speaking into your soul. We have those moments where we do feel like God is talking to us and speaking to us, and we trust that those thoughts, those words are coming from Him as long as they line up again with God's Word. We can trust into that. Or maybe it is directly from God's Word as we study His Word and we apply His Word to our lives. When we cry out to God, I believe we ought to expect an answer from Him. It may not be immediate. It may take time. It may not come in a way that we expect it to come. But we need to put ourselves in a position to receive. Because David had complete trust and confidence in God, he was able to do what he did next. Verse 5, he says this, I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. He says, I can sleep at night. Even though I know that I have many coming against me, my own sons after me, I can still sleep at night. And the word that comes to my mind, peace. He's at peace. Because of his confidence and trust in God, he is at peace in this moment. Last week, Rick Atchley, if you're here, he talked about sleep and the need for sleep, right? And how it, on a health side, we need it for our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health. And we all gave it, amen, yes, we need more sleep. But many also said, man, I just wish I could get to sleep, right? Like, oh, it'd be really nice if my brain would shut off whenever I actually lay down at night. David says, well, here's how I sleep at night. I put all my trust in God. All my worries, all my anxieties, all my fears, I give them all to God and I go, night, night. I'm out. That may be an oversimplification. You might be thinking, yeah, right, if it only was that simple. But it's a good place to start. Are you handing over all of life's worries to Him, or are you trying again to be self-sufficient and power through? Because when you try to power through, that's when the brain won't shut off, because you're trying to solve all the world's problems and not leaving it up to God. And he goes on, he says, and every morning when I wake up, right? When I get up in the morning, I only know, it only proves once again that God is trustworthy. He got me through another night, and He has a plan for me today. So David is able to say what he does in verse 6. He says, I will not fear. The tens of thousands drawn up against me on every side, I'm not going to fear them. I'm at peace in all of this. I am not going to fear anything that this life's going to bring my way. Because of God, I don't have fear. You plus God can take on anything. We need to remember that. David says, so this is what I pray, verse 7, arise, O Lord. This is his prayer. Arise, O Lord, deliver me, O my God. Strike all my enemies on the jaw, break the teeth of the wicked. Have you ever prayed a prayer like that? I would love to hear you be sitting in your small group and go, hey, here's my prayer request. I would love for God to, take out my enemy, see what your group says. Oh, you need therapy. And so we might ask, can we even pray a prayer like that? Well, David does. God, get up, you get in the ring, you go up against my enemies, you punch them in the face, you knock out their teeth. And maybe you're even got names going through your head of who you'd like to see that happening to. Stop. Because of God, we can know that our enemies will be dealt with. I don't believe that we are to find joy in our enemies eventually going to hell, right? I mean, our hope is that all would come to know Christ. But also, I think we've got to identify who our enemies are. Paul gives us this identification. He says, hey, don't forget, our battle's not against flesh and blood, but it's against spiritual powers. Those enemies, the spiritual enemies that are out and about, doing their work and causing their havoc, those we can pray this prayer boldly. God, go to battle. Rid my life, rid my family, rid this place of these evil forces. Knock out their teeth. David finishes his song in verse 8. He says this, from the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people. In this time of unbearable pressure, David's hope is in God, his deliverer. Not in himself, not in all the men that are on his side still. His hope is in God. And if you read the rest of the story, I encourage you to do that. You'll see how God worked and moved in the midst of his time of challenge. But he says, God, may your blessing be on your people. Again, the fact is, every one of us, we're going to face trials, we're going to face adversity. And let's be real. Sometimes, like I said earlier, we over-exaggerate. Sometimes, I ran across this video this week. We act like this kid in this video as he's going into a boxing match. You got to watch it again. I just love that. Sometimes we're a little overdramatic. Sometimes we just want to tap out. Sometimes we just want to fling ourselves onto the ground and throw a fit. We deal with people that cause us misery. We deal with circumstances that foster fear, trials that lead to desperation. And on some occasions, like David, if you read the story, David really, a lot of what he's dealing with in this was self-inflicted because of some of the things that he had done 7 or 8 years prior to this. And that's where he's kind of found himself today, is dealing with the circumstances and consequences of that. And sometimes we're the same way. We're dealing with consequences of our own stupidity, right? You your mouth got you into trouble and now you're trying to dig out of the hole that you dug, right? Or your mortgage is way more than you can afford and you're stressed out over your bills. Or your own inaction in a situation and now has left you dealing with the circumstances and consequences of that. Whether it's our own doing or something outside our control, trouble is going to come. Storms of life are going to rage. And the question is, how are we going to respond to it? David turned to God, his deliverer. And may we do the same. I encourage you, here's my encouragement to you today. Here's my go and do likewise statement, is go and cry out to God. Maybe this afternoon, maybe this evening, find a place where you can be by yourself. Maybe it's out in your car. Shut the door and go at it. And cry out to God. Assess your circumstance, right? That's what David did. He had many, you may have one. Or maybe you have many, but assess it. God, I have this going on. Lay it out before him. Cry out to him. And listen for his answer through his word, maybe through godly counsel. I know it's not intuitive for us to lean into our pain and want to deal with our pain. I know that. That's not where I'm at. I mean, I go to a counselor, and the first time I went to him, we're here a while back, he said, "When was the last time you cried?" And I went, "I don't cry." Okay, my dog died. I cried. Anyway. But his idea, his thought is you got to lean into your pain. We have to lean into our pain. We have to cry out. And specifically, we need to cry out to God. And if we will do that, if we will acknowledge our brokenness and step towards restoration, I believe it's then we can step towards peace and hopefully get a really good night's sleep. Let me close with Paul's final words in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 16. He says this, "Now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times and in every way. The Lord be with you all." Let's pray. Father in heaven, God, we do want to cry out to you. God, we live in a busy, messed up world, and the fact is a lot of us lead busy, messed up lives. God, help us to get away with you. Help us to examine ourselves and circumstances, and help us, God, to just turn it all over to you and allow you to be our deliverer. God, we know you're our ultimate deliverer, that Jesus paid the price. You have delivered us from sin and shame and death, and we have hope in this life because of him, because of you. And God, we're thankful for that. But God, as we live out the day to day, God, help us to continue to cry out to you and to lean into you and to walk with you and to surround ourselves with others that can speak into us and speak your truth. God, we pray that you will continue to do great works in us and through us. And as David's prayer ended, God, may your blessing be upon your people. We love you. We trust you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.